All right, guys, so we're going to do some 2D sketching real quick, and then we're going to go over to Blender and play around with these ideas over there. So it's going to be an Unleash video, not a tutorial necessarily, but we'll talk about a couple things along the way. So some guys are trying to work on these projects, environment projects or whatever the case, and they are struggling with them because there's so much to do. And so the 2D sketch here is going to be a little bit of a reminder that you start simple, right? And just use a line tool. I mean, if you're drawing traditionally, you'd use a ruler possibly, right? You can start to think about composition, all your design fundamentals, art fundamentals, start to figure out, how this shape is broken up with some stuff like this, and like how you might want to continue to break it up as well. Different little edges you might want to follow, things like that, right? And we start simple. This is like blockout. And then from here, we can refine things. But when you're working in 3D, a lot of times you're doing way too much, way too fast. And you don't think about just taking it one step at a time. And if we kind of slow ourselves down for a bit, we can be a little bit more purposeful with what we're doing. Start thinking about, are we going to break things apart? We're going to have a little cylindrical piece there, maybe add a little chamfer at the top. Just do another line there to kind of reconfirm that. Maybe we do some bevels here. Rounded corners. And so now our shape, we start looking at it. You can kind of see its proportions, its composition, and determine if we like things or if we don't like things as well. So like, I like a lot of this, but I don't like this bottom side being so large. I'd rather it be smaller, like up in this direction, right? And I think it'd be too much to just move it. So maybe I just redo it real quick. So that composition will be a little bit different now. Yeah, change the design a little. But I'm just going to kind of go through the process of doing this until I get something looking kind of the way I want. And, we can play around with ideas on a new layer. Like we don't have to like worry about messing something up necessarily. If we want to try out some different ideas, different kind of like line breakups, things like that. Let's see if it works for us. Where we might want some details as well. Maybe we want some little lines in here, little vents or something. We could certainly do that. And just start detailing it more or less, or continue to break it up. So if you, just make parallel lines, certainly do that. You see that one was off. Let's fix it and move on. You don't have to make everything super wide either. You can make them very narrow. If you want to collapse it, just Control E. So we can keep drawing on this. Think about how it would break apart in real life as well. Like if this is a front panel, it needs to break apart, maybe. Who knows? Add additional detail to it. Maybe split that entirely. Make more vents. Think about patterns, repetition, symmetry, all your design fundamentals, basically. Form versus function. Like, what is this thing? What does it do? I have no idea what it is. I probably could did those better, but think about balance. How would you balance this thing out? Maybe I could cut those a little different. It would look nicer, but for now, we'll just keep going. Maybe this is some kind of little panel that opens. We put a little square in there. Represent a handle at some point, or like a lever, something to open it, right? And how does this, like, where does this thing exist? Is it like, how does it move around? Like, what is it, right? A lot of times big mechanical objects in factories and whatnot are moved by forklifts or cranes, things like that. And so you just use guidelines to get it started. Make those more identical if we copy and paste. But the main thing is that we're working out the object, right? Like we're getting it going. If something's really distracting you, just erase it. Don't be afraid of erasing things. But we're getting there, and we can add additional elements. We can just have a little fun, put a little mounting bracket up here. I don't know, maybe it needs it. And maybe there's like a little cylinder or something up here. So you can make little rounded edges if you need to. I think it helps your ability to recognize the shape there as a cylinder as opposed to a square, basically. So you can do that. Why this thing hangs off over here, I have no idea. So I really don't like that idea. This is where you determine if you can change things. It's better if you figure it out sooner rather than later. It still hangs off, but it feels a little bit more balanced now. A little bit more realistic, perhaps. Changes our composition, but this is the time to do it early on, not later. That big base shape is what matters most. So that way you're not struggling later. The better you do your base, you get it more correct, the easier it is to detail things, right? And this is going to be true on all of your projects for the most part. You're going to start kind of simplistic or rough. It's not going to always be perfect. And you're going to probably rework your objects until they become nicer and nicer. If it's a 3D model of a character or an environment or whatever the case, the blockout portion of that, or the initial sculpt or whatever you choose, the rough concept that you're going to create, is going to be the most important aspect for the most part. And I don't know how I would run this here. Maybe we'll just combine it for now. And we'll do that. So you can see now we're getting into that area where we got to make sure that base is still good, or it could run into issues. I don't know if I'd change much more on this one. It seems pretty good, but we might, just continue detailing it maybe. Do little subtle sub-shapes. Maybe we just make these all little squared sections. All right, so it's not really art what we're doing right now, right? It's kind of just coming up with an idea. I should separate those the same distance apart. Make this one a little smaller so they're all different sizes. Not too bad. If this is going to round at the top, just go ahead and make it look like it rounds a little maybe. Doesn't really matter how you do that, but go back through. You can add little bevels. Certainly will make it look a little nicer. That's a good one. And that's all we need on that. And down here, if we keep going with this kind of long setup here, oops, if I can actually draw it, not erase it. Like it's only going to look so-so. It starts to pancake right here. Like these are all, you see, it's like I don't know if I'd want to do that. So to avoid that, I don't know if I would do that at all like that. Might just add a big section that does that. And then occasionally I'll pull some down, maybe. Like little support sections. So that way it's a little bit more vertical. Could line these up right there. Or we could try offsetting things a little bit. Not real sure what would be more realistic in that case. So pulling in references at this point would be good as well, so we can try to key in on a little bit more realism anyways. But you can play with just shapes and come up with a vast majority of your ideas. It's a lot of fun. Yeah, it's quite good. So just a 2D drawing here from the side. We could be doing like isometric or perspective drawings as well, but it's going to make it a little bit harder, more challenging to do. So we'll just kind of keep going with this idea. This should probably like line up to here. See? So a little bit further. All right. But yeah, basically more or less we kind of got something going. And this could be just like one part of a bigger project, perhaps. So that it might just be like a little section of something else. Maybe you're doing like big support structures for like a spaceship or something. And we can keep designing basically like another shape, another sub shape, right? And doing it in drawing is excellent, like sketching them out. Because if you try modeling this, like maybe these aren't, forklift pieces here. Maybe these are like bolted in or something, instead. So we'd attach it at some point. Probably have bolts in here somehow, like right there. Anyways, so yeah, we could just fix that later if needed, I guess. But we're just going to start working these ideas out. And I don't like how those lined up like that. So like this was beveled. This would be beveled smaller, maybe. Okay, references obviously go a long way. Just collect some good, interesting hard surface stuff from whatever reference you want. I guess like from vehicles or cranes or things like that. Anything with structural steel, basically. Probably work here. I was going to stop it there, but I don't know if I need to. I can just keep going with it. That'll come down. Can round that out. So in this case, I'm thinking of an aircraft landing gear. So I do use my middle palette for this quite a bit. And I'd say that's okay like that. Around here, bring it over. And you can see where that goes, right? Okay. And we could add more to it, obviously. Take your time on this process. Just keep doing a little bit more, but be purposeful. It's not always about loose sketching. Although I really, really enjoy loose sketching first, and we'll talk about this in just a sec. It's just that you have to slow down sometimes. I know everybody talks about being super fast as 3D artists and getting a bunch of stuff done. But when you're learning, it's not always the best thing to try to be fast. It's better to go kind of slow and actually learn, and then start to build yourself up as an artist. And you'll pick up speed as you go through projects and you do more and more. You'll start to understand things a lot better. So like this, I'll go ahead and bold out here. You'll get into these areas where it's form versus function. You know, it's not just about creating shapes, it's about creating functionality. Something like this may occur. And what you see is maybe not what I see, right? Like the way I'm imagining it. So this is one of the tricks with creating designs, concepts, is that you're trying to, well, more than likely, you're going to be sharing this with somebody, unless you're doing it for yourself, right? But the goal is to go ahead and make it in a way that it's easily readable, like people understand what's going on with it. So if you pass this off to a modeler later on, or even if you're going to model off of it, you want to be able to tell what's going on here and how it functions and works and what's in front of one another. So you want to make sure that it's readable. And in our case, I'm just doing a fill because I don't think it was quite maybe completely clear to you guys what was going on at the bottom there. But it'll make a little bit more sense with the fill, right? So I'm just doing a manual fill for this one, but you can often do like a lasso select around the whole edge, perhaps, or even just, you know, just draw out the lines, which I could just show you right now. Like as long as we do a completely connected silhouette here, and we could just do a fill in the middle. Krita actually just changed the fill tool so that you can fill a little bit differently now by a color selection, believe it or not, which I'm not going to use. It's pretty cool that, and it does work, but it's just that I don't think I necessarily need it for this one. So we'll just use a regular fill. I'll show you where that's at in case you're wanting to use it maybe. All right, so let me finish the sections here. This is also going to be very similar to the border there. You just got to make sure it's all connected like this, okay? So instead of using a lasso tool, I find this one to be quite effective too. And you can do this with no aliasing on it, or no anti-aliasing. You can get pretty good fills with no like little white aliasing effects and things like that. But what we're going to do is grow it so we kill that off anyways. So the fill bucket, tool properties, you usually have your tools options docker. I have a setting so it works up here in preferences. You can change that, but fill extents, right? Default, this is, I believe, the new one right here, right? It's built fill specific to boundary color. So if you click that, you have a boundary color. In our case, it would be this gray. We could just like sample it maybe. And then we could fill and it'll go out to that color basically. Didn't get it perfect on this one. But I don't think it was going to help us much anyways, because normally I just use the regular one and grow it by 1 pixel. And it should do more or less the same thing. So it doesn't make as much sense in this case, maybe. But you can see. All right. But yeah, that makes a lot more sense now, right? Like there's a big negative space in there. These are actually pushed backwards, it's not being pushed forward, which some of you may have read it that way, where it looked like it was pushed forward. But yeah, you can build up really fantastic ideas like this very fast. And just a little bit of shading on it, you could definitely go through and make this much, much more readable, basically, as far as going forward and backwards. So you can add shadows, perhaps, or whatever. Just ambient lighting changes, perhaps. And that's for another video, perhaps, doing all the illustration techniques and like rapid ways of just coloring things and stuff. But usually I do it the slow way anyway, so it's not the fastest, but I think you get the idea there, right? Those are pushed back. This might have a little shadow in that area. Stuff like that. And you can do like material changes as well. Some of these might have different materials. But you can pull things forward or backwards by doing that. Like these would be just a slight bit darker gray, maybe. Just to show that they go backwards. Like slight bit. Like that. You might just add shadow in some areas. And then, you know, like this is supposed to be structural. Like it's like thin aluminum and it gets this imprint so that it's a little bit more sturdy. It's not as like, it just adds rigidity to the aluminum maybe, you know? It's not going to bend as much. Little bends in the metal do that. That's why you see that commonly in industrial designs and things like that. And then these ones could be, you know, brought further back. Oh, we could alpha lock this, by the way, or pixel lock it, so I don't go outside of the, oh, not lock. I thought that was pixel. Yeah, pixel lock should work. I'm not sure what's going on with that. Maybe it's because this is semi-transparent. Oh no, that would be if we were working on this one. This was the fill one. Yeah, so we could do it on this one, I guess. I forgot I created another layer, but there you go. Yeah, so we could go right over the edge. It doesn't matter. It's not like we're going to mess it up. So we only have to focus on one edge now, save us a little bit of trouble, which is great. So this is the whole reason I wanted to go through this. You saw how simple this started, right? And it's starting to become better. It's still not at a point that I would say it's fully fleshed out, but it still starts very simple. And through iteration, it starts to become a little bit nicer. When you're doing a big project like an environment, you do this process repetitiously over and over again. The only difference is you might be doing it in 3D, you might be doing it in Substance, you might be doing it with a high poly or a low poly. You have to start working your projects out. And when you're doing an environment, you have dozens, if not hundreds of objects that you have to work, right? And so it becomes overwhelming because like, this is just one thing. Now make this, right? Turn this into a game model. But we have to do a whole bunch of other stuff for the environment still. Maybe we got to create some poles, light fixtures, cargo containers, floors for a hangar. Like we're doing some kind of like Star Wars Imperial cruiser or something, right? We got to, maybe a lot of stuff we got to do on the environment. But you get the idea. It takes time. Each little project, whether you're drawing the concept design out first, or you're going to do some modeling, it starts rough. It becomes nicer, generally speaking, the more and more you do things. You don't always move straight into making a super nice model. Although you can, but I'd call that going for the goal, right? Like you just go for it and see if it comes out right. But you don't think about all the little, especially for like concepts anyways, you may not be thinking about all the little things we were doing here, where we're measuring stuff and trying to figure out our composition. And like, does it read well? Does it read good? Maybe, maybe not, who knows? But the main thing is that you do have to think about those things. Because now I got like a little bit of space back here. So if I needed like a walkway, and eventually it has like handrails, let's say it's coming forward towards us or something. You see where I'm getting at? Like maybe you can actually get to this thing and work on it with a catwalk or something like that. So that empty space might be useful. But that's the process there. And so when you're in Blender anyways, and you want to start modeling things that are super complex, you're fighting with the tools a lot of times. You're going to be fighting constantly trying to use the tools. If you have pencil and paper, it's pencil, paper, eraser usually. And you have to force yourself to do everything manually by hand. And in Krita, you have more tools available to you, which is great because you can do like symmetry, right? Like we can use the symmetry and we can play around with compositions and try out different ideas with this, perhaps make different kind of little guides and start to work into these shapes here. You see what I'm saying? But you don't have that available. Well, there's ways to do it in Blender with like grease pencil, right? But it's much harder to think this way while working sometimes. And so you can see like we can do all these different little ideas now and just practice it and have fun with it. It's much easier. And we're not doing top, left, right, bottom at the same time. We're just doing like a side, you know? It's much, much harder when you start doing all three sides, I think. Or six sides or whatever you're working on. So you got to figure there's like a top, bottom, left, right. And it might have some parts that are symmetrical, some parts that are asymmetrical, so on and so forth. And you got to figure out like what's going to work and what's not going to work in your situation. And every little shape can also have a bunch of further detail basically to it, right? Like you can start really getting crazy with this stuff and start really having fun with it. And I don't know if I would do that necessarily, but let's see. I was thinking about trying to turn this into a frame. Something more like this, maybe. See how it goes. Got to think about that breakup, like when it would take place. Get rid of that one. Not end to end, basically, is what I was not wanting to do is go end to end like that. So it's more like this. You fix it if needed. But you get the idea. All right, so we're kind of flooding the detail into that area a little bit. Still need to break things. Right. Symmetry is awesome to work with because you get much quicker results, in my opinion. It's so fun. And it's just really, it makes it fun. All right. Erase the inside there. Basically, we're just rounding out the edge. You can do this with cubes in Blender. Make really long rectangular cubes or whatever, and then, just round it out. All right. And try to create some breathable room as well, like empty space. Not everything has to be filled completely, basically. And even that like midsection there, I don't know if I need that at all. It's just extra stuff. I think these are too thick on the outside here. I don't know if that makes much sense, but anyways. We can definitely keep working it. I don't think we need that big of a curve for this drawing, but we'll go ahead and fix it real quick. Maybe just curve the ends. A little bit. And do one more little setup here. Notice I'm doing this like a pencil sketch. You go very light. When you really like something, you can go over it a little bit heavier or double it up. Although I wouldn't highly recommend doubling everything up because it starts to look bad if you do that. But okay, now this one might just be additional detail. All right. There we go. Another setup here. Still have symmetry on, so we should be able to quickly fill this. Turn that pixel lock off. So other ways of shading it, of course, like I was mentioning. So you don't have to do it this way. This is just a thumbnail anyways. It's not like a full-on finished piece, right? I think you get where it's going though. All this could be pushed back a little. A little darker. Probably smaller for this one. Just a little subtle effect. It's fine. Not doing like a finished art pass on it or nothing. But we can do that all day long, basically. There you have it. Turn that symmetry off. And if we want to loose sketch more stuff on this, we can. That's the great thing about sketching and drawing. We can start to create all kinds of crazy stuff very fast. And if we find we need additional details that are asymmetrical, we can do that. You know, it's not really a problem. Might be like a plug down here or maybe on the side still, who knows? For whatever reason, it needs to run a little cord down. Maybe we have something like that going on. So I got it kind of going backwards. It's okay. Could do that as a solid single stroke and then use layer filters or layer styles to make it look more appropriate. This doesn't quite do what I want it to do either. So probably could redo that area a little bit. But the idea still counts. I mean, it's the same process here, right? Make like little attachments. So if you build things in kind of a modular fashion or you make little brackets to attach things, little mounting points. This works out pretty well, generally speaking. So now it's just asymmetrical. Could be a gas pump for all we know, but start assigning it some functionality. It'll make more sense, basically. And so that's great. That's exactly what we need. Maybe this is just a little piece right here, you know? Like maybe it's that detailed when you get up close to it. Have fun with it. 3D modeling is kind of the same process. You see some nonsense I was just messing with. But it's much more involved. And I often would recommend doing like these digital sketches where you just use a non-manifold mesh potentially. And you're trying to figure out everything you're doing, basically. Like you can use knife tools and cut things up, right? KCA. If I can cut today, it'd be nice. There you go. Chop that off in the back. So eventually that could be like out that way or something. Yeah, we'll delete those for a second. Maybe this drops. Some people call this digital sketching. Polygonal sketching, or whatever you want to call it, I guess. Like that could work, but maybe I want to do a cube or a cylinder or whatever, you know. I want to start working this one out into this area. We'll just line them up with each other. We can intersect. There's nothing wrong with that. But we can start to figure out like what we're trying to do or achieve here without getting involved too much in details, right? Just block out basically. So if you're doing an environment, you'd block out your environment, generally speaking, and kind of play test it with the blockout. And then later on, you're going to be doing all the work on all the objects you got to create. And that's going to happen. Takes time to build all of it, but it goes through the same process, rough to more refined to more refined. And if you have to redo things, you have to redo things, you know? If you don't know exactly what you're creating right off the bat, then you're just going to keep iteratively working on something. This is very stiff though. I mean, it's like cubes right now, right? So it's not that it's like crazy good looking or anything like that. It's just, you know, it's getting started. So we can scale it out and then maybe scale it out here. Okay. So maybe we're making something similar to what we just drew. This could be it, maybe, you know, maybe this works for us. Dissolve that center edge. We can just grab that edge, press F. Or a limited dissolve or dissolve selection. Control X anyways. AF. Boom. There you go. Can we do booleans? Yeah. And this is why booleans can be so good sometimes. There's nothing that stops you from doing this. If you want to do it as chamfers or bevels, it's up to you. Could this get an attachment to it? Cube in that area. See, it's like going inwards. That's fine, but delete vertices. Just make a little box on the end here or something. And now we can just start working this, right? If we want to Boolean things together, that's going to be on you. I wouldn't say it's necessarily required. Some things maybe would be good to Boolean together, like these ones. When you do a Boolean like this, by the way, usually you get nonsense in here like this. You can try to clean these things up, but oftentimes it's better to have one of these go a little further down, if not both of them, then do the Boolean, right? At least this is how I've often done it anyways. And then I'll KCA cut from usually that vertex, if I can get a hold of it, which it's not wanting me to. So we'll do it from that one. And then just chop this off. See, a little bit easier to work with. AF it. Still not quite right over here. Shade auto smooth real quick. All right. And now you have the long road of processing this big, bulky shape, turning it into something nicer. You know, figuring out if you want to bevel and don't want to bevel. Chamfer. You can use Mesh Machine. Remember, Mesh Machine has fuse. You can do that, maybe, if you find it works for you. So you can just turn any chamfer into an edge like that. You see? You might have to change the shape around. Usually I do that after this, but you could use like 0.55s or whatever custom ones. You can change it. Average tensions, change segment counts. Mesh Machine, excuse me, not Machine Tools. Mesh Machine uses odd numbers instead of even numbers for the bevels, if you would, right? So you can see how it starts to work out anyways. So yeah, I do use Mesh Machine quite a bit, but it's not really that I always talk about it. Do one at a time. You can see, like, it doesn't always work necessarily, right? Maybe it will now. Okay, we got lucky. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. You'll find times it doesn't work out, but there's usually a bevel order. Something that a lot of beginners, I think, don't understand is like there's certain ways you want to run your bevels potentially. So that way you end up with normally what you would call a quad bevel. Like you might find it useful anyways to model in this manner. I really enjoy doing this. And of course, Mesh Machine will let you unbevel things as well. But yeah, if we can work this out to a finer and finer result, then we can do that. Basically is what's happening here. So eventually you'll find that you'll have problems at certain points that it just doesn't seem to go as well as maybe you're hoping. Like, well, there's kind of one because I think I had, a double or something right here. Use a cleanup feature real quick. See if we can do that one again. Machine Tools cleanup feature. Do that again. Make sure it's good. Do a fuse. Okay, and it's like this whole bottom area at some point has to get done. Let's finish this one out. Okay, and now we're looking at this. If I try to chamfer all that, you see we don't have much room to play with things here. Like potentially we could try using the unscrew it feature. But a lot of times you got to do from like here to, oh yeah, we're not going to have much luck on that one. Maybe we don't use that one. Let's do a chamfer. Just fuse it real quick. All right. So a way to normal, keep sharps if you have them. Some sharps are okay to keep. I find like this area, I don't know if I would bevel that. There's no point. But if you find a reason to, then do it. Probably don't need as many segments. I guess we had something else going on in here. 8 segments, I guess. Don't need that many, but okay, there you go. That's an issue. I wonder if I can just dissolve that. Click that. Okay, and bevel it. Yeah, we got something else going on in here, I think. Some kind of doubles or something. See, even the chamfer has issues. It couldn't just need that edge. I mean, that's a possibility. It could just really need that edge in there to function correctly. I don't think there's doubles. Yeah, it doesn't look like it. Let's use loop tools curve. Ooh, that didn't do anything. I was hoping it would straighten that out. Maybe flatten. No. Straighten with machine tools, maybe. Yeah. That kind of helped it. Question is, does it now bevel correctly, right? I cannot get a hold of this area for some reason. Okay. Yeah, straightening it out apparently worked. Don't need that many segments for sure. Some tries it. Clean it up. Shade auto smooth, and we'll use a 55 right now. Bam, that was a lot of work for just that little section. Guess what we got to do still? If we're going to add any other details, we might still have to cut things in. And we could do these manually, like this, perhaps. And then like do like bevels on vertices, so Control B and V or Control Shift B. And then eventually we can work out panels and things like that, right? You see, we got to cut this one across still, apparently. The bottom side probably as well. But if we can establish the big shape, that's part of the battle right there, right? So we can get a hold of this whole area. We can do select loops in our loop regions or boundary loops. Separate. Eventually this becomes its own thing. We could do something kind of cool too. And we could do this with hard ops or machine tools where we create basically a Boolean shape, right? We use it like a Boolean because it's going to be a Boolean. Let's say we're just doing this number, right? We're going to toss it into this one. We just want to cut it though with like this one. So Shift Q, hard ops, use knife one, right? Boom, done. That's all it takes. I use machine tools a lot though, because it's just right click, machine tools, mesh cut, boom. Same thing basically, okay? And so you got to turn the mesh cut on to get that one. But later on I can, do things like separate this maybe. Like we can have like a little door panel or something perhaps. This is in the way, but you get what I'm saying? Like this does not have to be the hardest thing to do. Like we can solidify this. So Shift Q, solidify. And we can use hard ops for that. It might have issues in some areas, obviously. So we might have to do that area. A little bit different, but this one as well. We can just push it all the way in, solidify it. You can even apply this solidify perhaps. In the whole outer section here, boundary select, do it maybe a chamfer. A lot of times I don't like using solidifies. And I'll just extrude things like E and X. Maybe I grab this whole section here and chamfer this as well. Maybe it looks good with the chamfer. Who knows? But if you want to change it, you can just grab the area and go ahead and fuse it. Or you can boundary select, do a bevel, whatever, right? And so we can start working our ideas out, basically. Whatever ideas we have. If we got to do them with mesh cuts or booleans or standard modeling or even sculpting and retopo, this is where it happens on things like this. We can control these very precisely. See here. Use. It's going to be 5. We want to use 3, I think. These ones here. Fuse. Yeah, Mesh Machine is great because it also lets you unbevel things, right? So we could walk all that back if we wanted to. And we could slice it. Later on, separate it. See? Solidify it. Might not solidify very well, but see, like sometimes you get these weird effects that happen when you do solidification. Not maybe what you want. So / it. Usually I just end up running the extrusions in the ways I want. Like this. Oh, that one needs to go back. Okay. A lot of times you can go through these areas. Use the F2 add-on if you have it. Sometimes it works, but you see what's going to start happening on this one. Nah, not going to work. So other times you take these sections here, you might be able to get away with just pressing E and S. So you extrude and then scale. You can just eyeball it. It's one of my go-tos that I've used forever, but you should be able to also bridge edge loops, but I don't think you'll get an exact match exactly. So Control E, bridge edge loops, number of cuts up. You see, you try to match the segment count. You can change the smoothness factor, right? You can get it very close, but it might not be perfect. But at least you get a chance to match it segment count wise. Looking like I did that at the wrong number there, maybe. It's interesting. It's an odd number, I think. So we can go back through this area, refuse. We're going to press, you see the cap. We're going to do F to turn that off. And we'll do 3 segments. We'll try this one more time. This doesn't always work, by the way. Should be 4 segments. Or maybe not. 3. Yeah, it's 3. Okay. Yeah, so we can get kind of close to what we need. But the profile factor, yeah, not that one. Yeah, so bridge edge loops doesn't have it. I thought it was we'd have the option for something different, but we could set the inside perhaps, and then just use vertex snapping. Just work it out. So it'll be close. It won't be quite right, but AM merge by distance, Alt N recalculate outside perhaps. And we can mess with things like that. This one over here, we can grab all of it and then press GX and hold control and snap. AM merge by distance. So vertex snapping is really good. And that's all I'm trying to show there. Is that you can do vertex snaps. You can see that the way I refused this though, this doesn't look right or work right. So we're gonna grab it like this. We're gonna refuse it again. And we're gonna bump the counts up so they match again. 0.55. Okay, I guess it changed on us. I didn't realize it. It's unfortunate, but it's semi non-destructive, I guess, if you're careful. It works out well. Okay, yeah, there's one that failed for sure. It's just, yeah, it's not going to do that one. We'd have to finish the shape out, obviously. But yeah, we'll leave it for now. It's going to do a bevel on it eventually. That. So eventually you can start coloring your stuff up. Normally you use materials and you use viewport display colors. This is an old add-on that I made. It's got a little bug in it, so I took it down. But basically, if you want to do this, you could just use viewport display under object properties here. You can change the color here. It's the same thing. I just copied it up there and made a little add-on out of it. But so we can do stuff like this. If you're going to do this one, you have to use not material, but object. Okay, materials default usually. But you can kind of see where it's going at this point. Oh, box cutter causing me problems. Just trying to click, not trying to drag. Okay. These kind of bevels like this, while they're useful sometimes, usually not what you want to do. You want to do that non-destructively, you'd select like these edges and tag it with a mean bevel weight of 1. And then when you add a bevel, we'll just do like a regular bevel real quick. Hard ops. Change it to use weights. It'll only do those. You follow it with another bevel. And you might have to turn clamp overlap off temporarily. Might have missed an edge or something. Okay. Yeah, see, there was something going on back here. Turn these off just a second. Okay. You want to bevel these ones too. So add a bevel weight of 1. Like that. Okay. And so that's going to start to be more correct. But yeah, we might not want to do all of them. I've set up a shortcut to do that manually like that, but Yeah, so there you go. You can see the second bevel now will take effect later. So it's only doing these areas first. Then the second bevel takes effect. It's right here. The angle doesn't allow for that one. So we can bring it down further. As far as angles go, you just don't want to bring it down too far. If for whatever reason you can't hit the angle, the first bevel, just make it higher density. And then that angle you can bring down even further. Okay, before it starts to take effect on those. Sometimes you can get away with that. Sometimes you can't. In our case, it's just not working out. And occasionally this can happen. This angle just isn't going to work for us. With the two bevels, it's not going to work. I will manually bevel things as well. Okay. Combo that up with Mesh Machine. And you got a killer little combo, basically, right? You can make pretty much anything you guys want to make. It's not insanely hard to do this stuff. And this would be like more of your mid-poly type workflow anyways, right? So it's very easy to do. And you have to adjust anything because of the way we've been doing this. Like we can adjust anything at any time. Like we can refuse it, right? If needed. Press F, turn that cap off for a second, or turn it on. Yes, if we got to adjust it. This is the great thing about ngons, right? Like ngon workflow. It's not only possible, it's very doable, and you can combo it up with booleans, and then you can throw some retopo in here, perhaps. Who knows? All kinds of fun stuff, right? And we're only just getting started. Like we would have to chisel in all kinds of details all over the place and really take our time with the modeling of everything. And we would end up with basically the same idea of sketching of something like this out. But it takes so much more effort, so much more time. So like trying to think of design and working it at the same time, it's going to cause problems for you, right? And when you're working environments and they're really large and you got lots of stuff to do, like you're not focusing on those kinds of things. When you're doing the blockout of the whole environment, you're trying to figure out all the different objects you need to create and how you might work with them. But things like this come into play, like the bevels, they just go, that doesn't work the way we want it to, right? And these aren't hard to correct once you understand or know them, but it's just that when you need certain kind of bevels or corners, you have to know how to work these things. Like if I bevel this and I hit M a few times, I'm using a percentage bevel, okay? It's going to give me a different type of corner here because I did those additional cuts in that area. And so now we get a much better overall piece perhaps. And if I have to match that over here, good luck. Like it's not that simple and straightforward. So we actually are better off going over here and pressing, we'll just use K for this one. Cut it across. And we'll do the same over here, but we'll just hit Y. Okay. We're actually better off stealing this whole section, moving it over. So Shift D to duplicate it, Control M, middle mouse click, boom. Or you can use X, Y, Z. It flips to normals, so recalculate them. Yeah, but trying to do that again over here would be ridiculous. This is where your vertex snapping comes into play, emerging and doing things a little bit destructively sometimes. You don't need to go so heavy on the bevels usually for mid polys, but / that. Use the cursor selector, right? All these different tools we have to use to do this. We're just going crazy on the keyboard. Tons of mouse clicks, Control Shift Alt modifiers to do things. Hidden menu selections that you got to set up custom shortcuts. Don't design necessarily in 3D until you're very comfortable with 3D. It's better to just sketch. It's much faster, much easier to learn. And But eventually you can get to this point where like this starts to work out, which is nice. And you approach this from the same manner as drawing as well. Like we can do the basic shapes here first, you know. But there's like certain orders of doing things. Like I have to overextend this one to cut from this side to that side so I can dissolve it. If I try to bevel all these right now, it's going to go hayward. We can't always just bevel where we want. Always. Sometimes you got to do additional cuts so you can take these here and Control X on these ones. And then we can grab these and Control X here so that we only have this edge left. Now we can grab these vertices, Control B and V. All right, you see, even when we bevel these, even if it was a higher count, it might not create the exact curves we want. We might have to change things like shape, right? We might have to bevel each section individually as well. So like we'll bevel this one first. We'll use 4. And we might change the shape here on this one so it looks more correct. All right, just eyeball it. Control B over here. Might use 0.5s, right? And we can, you know, maybe make it bigger or something. Who knows? But there, now we got the cut in there. Now we can do that. We can scale it down, scale it on X, scale it on Z in this case. Maybe we do something like that. Maybe we push it down, do that. Grab here, alt click, boundary select, do a little bevel, shade auto smooth, weight normals, all that fun stuff. You can see it still doesn't have shade auto smooth working fully. Bump up the auto smooth. Might just be a weird error that we're having, but I think we're going to have to, on this one, it looks like we might have to tweak some things to get rid of that. That would probably come down to weighting the normals more correctly, which we can't do until we apply. Oh, we don't have a non-destructive bevel. My bad. A lot of times I do things non-destructively, so they're Alt-N, set face strength to strong, but it's not going to show up unless you turn face influence on. Sometimes this will help you correct issues in certain areas, like right here. Maybe we use strong on those, and maybe these ones we make weak, or maybe we make this one strong. Okay. See if it helps that shading in there a little bit. Also, sometimes when you have cavity on, that can influence the shading and make it look wrong when it's not. You can see it's actually not as bad as we probably thought it was. Still not good, but it's not terrible, I guess. And I have a suspicion if we were to reduce this, it would probably shade better for some reason. Yeah, apparently it does. So, yeah, a lot of work, guys. But it is work. It takes time. This is why you get paid to do this stuff usually, because it doesn't do itself, right? If you're looking to get a job in 3D, just know that that's what it comes down to, really. You get paid to do this because it's challenging, not because it's simple. It's fast. Always like super fast anyways. You have to learn to process these meshes, work them out. And make sure you use like right bevel counts. There you go, because I want to just have one in the middle. Look at that. All right. And eventually we can work that out further. Maybe separate it even. Doesn't quite have enough gap, in my opinion, but it's close. What did I just change the color of? The whole base? Yeah. All right. Just go with lights. Instead of yellows, light gray. You know, and then we add whatever else we got to do to that, basically. I guess the bottom didn't get done. Figure it would, but I'll just, okay. Then add a modifier or something. Should these be joined? I mean, it's possible that you join things like this at some point. You don't have to do it right away. If we do join this, the bevel will take effect on it, those two. This is already beveled, so it may be a good thing, it may be a bad thing. Oh, you see when we do a destructive Boolean. I'm using bool tools for this, by the way. It's doing auto Booleans, unions. But if we do a Boolean, it applies the modifiers. So you could get away with that, perhaps. Clean it up. Select this area here. So use machine tools, or mesh machine, excuse me. Click, alt click, boom. Do a little chamfer or bevel in there. Probably get away with 2 segment. Shades, auto smooth, weight normals, geometry data. I already had a weighted normal that I applied, so we're going to get rid of it when we did the Boolean. It's like, yeah, this worked okay, but I really need to refuse it and change the count maybe. Do it like that, right? Much easier. This is going to be for your kind of your stiffer objects though, right? Like more mechanical type stuff. If you're doing really a mix of hard surface and organics, I'd still think subdivision might be the better way of going for a lot of things. But you can definitely do Booleans in bevels that just kind of push things in ways that you probably didn't realize. Like I do a loop cut, I pull it out, and I can just do something like this maybe. See, so if we need some curvature to it, stuff like that can occur, basically. If you ever need things like that. Depending on where you do it, you'll see if I pull that up there and I bevel here, you see it goes over the extent. Not good, right? Hit M a few times, do that percentage bevel, and percent, there you go. You can do it right out to the edges, basically. You can get away with that if needed. All right. But yeah, when you're working on your bigger projects, it's going to be dozens and dozens of objects, but you just have to go through the modeling process. Game models don't always need a subdivision mesh. There's no point in making them unless you need them. Or if you find a useful technique. Remember, Booleans are just a tool. Subdivision is just a tool. Standard modeling is like the core of 3D modeling for the most part. And then geometry nodes is a tool. So if you think you got to do something like a lot of repetition, you need to be generated kind of randomly or scattered, use geonodes. It's just certain things that make life easier. Mesh machine tools, huge ones, hard ops, box cutter. My go-tos for sure. The modifier list add-on. You know, this add-on, I cannot overstate enough, is amazing because first, I like just the way it's laid out better than default modifiers, but something like a lattice, for example, you know, it's just by default, you have to use empties to make, or in our case of a lattice, you have to create a lattice object. You'd have to line it up to this thing. With this add-on, you just click, right? It creates a lattice. Now you can modify the shapes here. So when you're doing certain kinds of things, like a lattice modifier is huge, but this isn't like just restricted to that. Like hard ops does things like this too. So like you see lattice, boom, it's the same idea basically. So we can get in here and go into edit mode and do the same thing now. Delete. Our last modifier is dead. Delete it. Good. And yeah, simplistic kind of a representation here. But this is all you do. If you make mid-poly models like this, you can usually convert these to subdivision kind of easily. It's really not as hard as you think. Just for example, if we just start breaking this up a little bit, and I hit Control 2 and subdivide, yes, it looks like crap. It probably won't make the greatest results right now. But I just hit Control 2 and it's subdivided. A lot of this is already almost working. You see what I'm saying? So we turn those off in edit mode, and we just start working little segments and sections out. Even if they create n-gons and stuff. And see if we can't get things going, you know? Just see if we can't start isolating or localizing our terrible topology. And doing symmetry if needed. You see? Like we got a lot of little areas that we could potentially work out. But the main idea is that we can't actually start working them out. Especially with symmetry, it's a lot easier. Right? That whole issue over here, it's kind of on this big section now. Right? If we ran a bunch of loops over here, delete this, and then try to do a grid fill, it's, well, I probably should have matched it. But like if they match, like how many vertices are right here? We got 7. So we do 7 over here, right? Delete, grid fill, bam. So like, yeah, we can convert this into a subdivision mesh. We can leave them kind of haphazardly like this for now. And only start doing our repairs where we absolutely need them first, obviously. And make additional cuts if needed as well. This is that whole idea of converting n-gons into quads, right? The whole video I did. I'm doing this kind of sloppily right now, but it's still going to work by the end of it, right? See, we got it all the way across. So this whole area is now almost right in this area. If these went all the way down here, there's a good odd chance most of this starts working out. This one would probably do the same as the top one in the middle, connect to the outside. It's not like the world's best subdivision modeling, but it, you know, it's technically not too far off either. So that's good. That's what we're trying to do, not too far off. Could we leave that as like kind of trashy n-gons? Possibly. See? Kind of isolates the area. This is a trick that a lot of guys use for speed when they're doing game models and they still want to use subdivision. It's not that, this is not like good VFX quality subdivision. This is like, I'm cheating the system. I'm trying to get results as fast as possible. And if it works, it works. You know, it's kind of the trick with it. What matters most is that we're not getting errors when we bake. That's the big thing. And you might get errors off of those n-gons too. Like they might show up. So you got to be real careful with it. You see? Perfect? No. You just do big knife cuts like KCA. Start cutting, you know, cut it up with purpose, but get the idea. Like this side we've been working, starting to look decent. The side we weren't working, not so much so. See how that looks now? Surprise. Actually even looks correct, even though there's n-gons in here. It's weird how that works. Probably because, yeah, it's flat. This is what it comes down to. Now, is the zebra stripes going to look good on something like that? Surprise. Not perfect, but not too terrible either. A lot better than you probably thought it was going to be. Anyways, what are we at now? Hour and 15-minute video. I think we've seen enough in this one, but that's the whole idea. I wanted to go through these little things and just kind of reiterate some of the ideas behind all this modeling stuff, right? I did not mean to do that, whatever that was. Yeah, we're like a hop, skip, and a jump away from having a subdivision mesh, basically, right? A little easier than you probably thought. Combo your tools up, practice working with the add-ons, your tools, all the different techniques. They could all be useful to you. And then if you can master 3D modeling in that respect, when you start working on bigger projects, like you can make things in a variety of different ways, but like you can find ones that are the fastest, most effective ones, and you can just really like slam through some geometry and models, and you can pump out really crazy stuff in a single day if you really wanted to. Depends on how complex they are or how accurate you're trying to be, if they're like realistic, like real world objects. But game mesh doesn't always have to be the craziest thing, basically, right? So I'll leave it here in this one. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll check you out next one. All right, take care.